What do you remember about yourself? Your name, your face, the key events of your life. Now imagine your memory gets wiped every 15 minutes. You wake up in an unfamiliar place and have no idea how you got there. How do you live like that? And how do you solve a mystery, make sense of a tragedy that's already happened? That's exactly the challenge the protagonist of Christopher Nolan's Memento is up against. The film came out in 2000 and instantly captivated both critics and everyday viewers. It's not just a solid thriller, it's a radical cinematic experiment. The movie's main trick is its structure. Half of the film, in color, runs in reverse chronological order, the other half, in black and white, moves forward. The two threads meet in the finale, and in that moment the viewer, assuming they have put everything together correctly, finally understands it all. The budget was modest by Hollywood standards, just a few $1 million. The box office take, nearly 40, an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay, and the status of a film that rewrote the rules of how stories can be told in cinema. How did Nolan, still a relatively unknown director at the time, pull it off, and why is Memento not just a puzzle for film nerds, but a fundamental exploration of how memory works, of self-deception, and of the very nature of truth? Let's break it down from the very beginning, that is, from the end. To understand the boldness of Memento, you need the context. In 2000, Christopher Nolan wasn't yet the director who rewrites the rules. He was a promising filmmaker still searching for his voice. Nolan was born in London in 1970. His filmmaking career didn't begin in Hollywood but in a university film club. In the 80s and 90s, he made his first amateur short films such as Tarantella, Larceny and Doodlebug. The real calling card that opened doors for him was his first feature, Following, 1998, a noir thriller about a writer who tells strangers. Two facts matter most. First, the budget, just $6,000. Nolan saved on everything, shooting the film on weekends over the course of a year. Second, the structure. The story in Following is told non-linearly, something critics noticed right away. It was after Following succeeded on the festival circuit that Nolan got the chance to make his first Hollywood project. He based it on an idea by his younger brother, Jonathan, who wrote a short story called Memento Mori. Usually you write a story first, then a screenplay, then make a film. But for the Nolans it happened the other way around, and that's the best description of how their creative duo works, and it also matches the film's own non-linear nature. Jonathan Nolan was still in college when he came up with a sketch of a man who, after an injury, is completely unable to form new memories. At that point, the story was really just a bundle of ideas, structural outlines and observations about how the human mind tries to stay in control when memory starts to fail. He recounts his thoughts to Christopher in the car. Over a couple of hours on the road, they discuss the concept and hammer out the core plot. As Christopher gets so excited that he starts writing the screenplay before his brother has even finished his own story. The premise was genius in its simplicity, the story of a man with an unusual form of amnesia trying to conduct an investigation. Nolan was given $4.5 million to make it, and critically, complete creative freedom. No one expected a box office hit from a 30-year-old director. They expected an auteur statement, and he delivered, using everything he'd developed before and turning a limited budget into the film's greatest strength. So what is the genius mechanism of Memento? The entire film is two parallel narratives. The color scenes, they show us Leonard Shelby's story, and they run in reverse chronological order. Each next color scene is what happened immediately before the previous one. The black and white scenes, they move in the familiar forward direction, and they are a phone conversation between Leonard and a certain caller who helps him systematize information. These two lines, the color one backward and the black and white one forward, move toward each other and meet precisely in the film's finale, creating the complete picture. Why did Nolan take such a risk? To put the viewer in the protagonist's position. We, like Leonard, don't remember what happened yesterday, that is, in the previous scene. Every new episode is a waking up. Who is this person, friend or enemy? Should I believe what I just saw? We're forced to reassemble the mosaic exactly the way he does, relying on the same evidence: tattoos, Polaroids, dubious notes. Nolan turned a $9 million budget into an advantage. The camera is often static or uses simple but effective techniques: instant constant repeats, abrupt cuts that mimic a memory glitch. The script was his main trump card. According to the crew's recollections, Nolan had an exact map, a storyboard of this entire time puzzle, so as not to lose the most complex rhythm for even a second. Guy Pearce's performance isn't about remembering, it's about a constant first-time realization. His coolness, vigilance, flashes of rage, these are the reactions of a man who relearns the world every 15 minutes and can't afford to relax. His memory isn't in his head, it's on his skin, in his pockets, on the walls of a cheap motel. And we, the viewers, are forced to trust this same unreliable storage media. But Memento isn't a puzzle you can simply solve, it's an exploration of fundamental questions. The first and main one, what is memory? The film argues that memory isn't an archive, it's a story we keep retelling and editing to ourselves. Leonard is an extreme version of that. He doesn't remember facts, he writes down a narrative. John G. raped and murdered my wife. That isn't a memory, it's a plot he has grafted into himself, and that plot dictates his actions. Which brings up to the second theme, self-deception. Leonard deliberately destroys evidence that doesn't fit his story. He refuses to remember what he doesn't want to know. His condition isn't a tragedy but a convenient tool. It allows him to live in an endless cycle of revenge that gives him purpose and meaning. Without it, he's just a man in an empty room. And finally, the third theme, the nature of truth. In Leonard's world, objective truth doesn't exist. There's only his current perception based on questionable notes and other people's manipulation. The film sharply poses the question, if our identity is the sum of our memories, then who are we when memories disappear? All that remains is pure instinct, a shell that others can feel. That's why Memento isn't a whodunit detective story, it's a why detective story. Why does a person need to believe a story, even if it destroys him? Why do we need the truth if we can't create our own? The film gives no answers. It forces you to look for them within yourself, and that is its greatest strength. The climax of Memento isn't the unmasking of the killer, it's the moment when the two timelines, color and black and white, finally meet, and we grasp the terrifying truth. Leonard knows. He has known the truth about himself for a very long time. His revenge isn't a search of justice, it's a deliberately constructed, endlessly repeating cycle. He erases some clues and creates others to give himself a new target, so he won't be left alone with the emptiness. His famous line, "Now, where was I?" isn't the question of a confused man, it's a ritual, the starting point for the next turn of his personal mythology. The film's impact was immediate and thunderous. Memento became the biggest revelation of 2000 and the triumph of 2001. A modest $9 million project grossed nearly $40 million, but more important was the critical response. A prize at Sundance, 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Original Screenplay and Best Film Editing. The film landed on lists of the best movies of the decade. For Nolan's career, it wasn't just a success, it was his ticket to the big leagues. He proved that the most demanding, fully immersive kind of cinema could be commercially viable, critically acclaimed, and cult. Without Memento, there wouldn't have been the absolute trust from studios that later allowed him to make Inception or Tenet. He created the formula for the intellectual blockbuster. The film's legacy goes further. It became a textbook on non-linear storytelling for a whole generation of filmmakers. It legitimized complex structure as a central dramatic device. Memento showed that the audience isn't passive, they're ready to become co-authors, to assemble the puzzle and find the greatest pleasure, not in the solution but in the act of thinking. Memento is more than a thriller, it's a flawlessly engineered time and thought machine, a film that doesn't just tell a story but forces your brain to operate in a unique paradoxical mode, much like the memory mode of the main character. And now it's your turn. What was your experience with this film? On which watch did you manage to piece together the full chronological mosaic in your head? Do you think the ending turns Leonard into a tragic hero, a victim of circumstance, or is he a conscious manipulator? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments. I'll be it'll be interesting to discuss. If this video helped you untangle the complexities of Memento or simply reminded you of a brilliant film, support us with a like and subscribe to the channel. Many more breakdowns are coming of movies that changed cinema. Remember, sometimes to understand where you're going, you first need to figure out where you've been. See you next time.